So one of the, well, I would say the original 3D fighter, Virtua Fighter, is coming to digital download now. Virtua Fighter 5 was actually released as a boxed retail product back, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago on PS3 and Xbox 360. But now the final showdown is coming to digital.
Yeah, so let me clarify on that a little bit. Virtua Fighter 5 was released in 2007 on both the Xbox and the PlayStation. But what we're doing now is bringing out Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown, and they're actually separate. You don't need 5 to play Final Showdown. What we really did here is 5 was out here, and then since then, the arcade in Japan has been continually having updates to the code, and then we locked in the code to this definitive version of the code, as we call it, and we're calling it Final Showdown. So it doesn't mean it's the last Virtua Fighter, it means it's the last Virtua Fighter 5, the final showdown of Virtua Fighter 5. So we think we've taken the best of the best from all the arcade stuff in Japan on 5 and brought it here for Final Showdown. And yes, it will be a digital download through Xbox Live Arcade and the PlayStation Network.
All right. So what would you say is the major differences that has gone on through all these reiterations and versions that have been out in arcades?
Yeah, well, one thing that Virtua Fighter has always been really solid with is the balance of the game. You can play any character and have a chance against any other character, which is not the case in all fighting games. So we're very excited that we were able to maintain that while also making some major enhancements to the game. We've added 2 characters, Taka Arashi, who was actually from Virtua Fighter 3, but that's kind of long ago. He's a sumo wrestler. We brought him back. Real cool character to play. And then we also brought back a new character, Jean Cujo, who's a French karate expert. And both of those characters, add a lot to the game. We added one arena for Taka Arashi's sumo ring. And then on top of that, we changed the move list a little bit for the characters. And longtime fans should not be discouraged or anything by this. I promise you, when you get your hands on this game, we'll be all across the U.S. this year with the game. It will feel like Virtua Fighter 2. We just changed the move lists up a little bit to keep things fresh, but also to make this game a little bit more accessible. Like, what I mean by this, for example, is the throw escape mechanics. Before, you could have many directions of throws and throw escapes. Now we've simplified it to 3 directions. So if someone tries to throw you forward, there's only one way to counter that, right? We believe it's makes it a lot more accessible for people who irrationally feared the game before. Because one thing about Virtua Fighter is people always felt like it's this awesome game. I've never heard one bad thing about it, but they feel like it's too complicated for them or they can't play it. And we're trying to bring out the best of the game and show that that's not the case. It's really a misconception. So take a look at our dojo mode, and we'll have command training in there and free training. So it tells you about when you do a punch or a kick, do you have an advantage or a disadvantage after you do that particular move? And then you start to realize the strategy and how to best go about battling an opponent.
Because I think that the thing that discourages a lot of people is that you can't just randomly press a few buttons and expect a brilliant move to come out of it, because you really need to learn the system to be successful in Virtua Fighter.
So that's correct. We don't want Virtua Fighter 5 to be a button masher. That's never what it has been. But at the same time, as I said before, it's not that complicated to learn, but there is the depth there where if you want to be a phenomenal expert player, you can do that. So there's punch, kick, guard, 3 buttons, and then you do combinations of those buttons with directions. So it's not that complicated from a control standpoint. All you have to learn is the strategy of advantage, disadvantage that I talked about, and when do you attack, when do you defend, if someone is punching, should you be guarding or should you be throwing them, all those kinds of things. And I think, as I mentioned before, the dojo mode and some of the other things we're doing really help you to get a grasp of those techniques quickly.
So since it's a digital release, normally you would think that it's a little bit less of a release. It's a little bit limited. But are you bringing online play and everything that would come to expect from a fighting game these days?
Yeah, don't be thinking that just because it's a digital release, it's not a full game. It's a full game. It's a great game. Everyone who's played it has told me that. They've been very happy with it. We're going to have standard offline versus mode as well as online mode. We'll have the dojo mode, as I told you about before, and we did have an announcement about the special license challenge mode. The details on that are to be fleshed out later, but essentially it helps you to get a feel for how good you really are. You undergo a series of challenges where you figure out, if I can complete this many, then I'm probably about this level of player, so that you don't have to be thinking, well, I can beat guys that have never played, but I lose to people that have played a lot before. You really get a sense of where you're at with the game.
Is there any customization and unlocks and stuff like that as well?
We are releasing some downloadable content and more details to come on that, but we've announced before that we're coming out with it, and stay tuned for exactly what it is and all that.
Do you have a date?
A date for the launch? It's launching in summer 2012.
Thank you very much for your time.
Yep, thank you.